The Christmas invitations sat on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. Gold embossed letters spelling out my mother-in-law's name, Victoria Ashford, seemed to mock me from the expensive cardstock. Another year, another mandatory dinner at the Ashford estate, where I would be reminded in 1,000 subtle ways that I wasn't good enough for her precious son. "You're coming this year, right?" My husband James had asked that morning, his tone more pleading than questioning. After 5 years of marriage, he still held on to the hope that his mother and I would somehow become friends. Sweet, naive James. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, practicing my smile. The one I would need to wear for hours while Victoria critiqued everything from my choice of dress to my inability to give her grandchildren yet. At 28, I'd built a successful career as a graphic designer, but to her, I was just the girl from the wrong side of town who'd trapped her son. "Of course I'm coming," I told James, kissing his cheek. "It's Christmas." What I didn't say was that each year, these dinners chipped away a little more of my soul. Victoria had perfected the art of the backhanded compliment, the dismissive glance, the conversation that excluded me while including everyone else. And James's sister, Charlotte, was her mother's perfect protégée, blonde, wealthy in her own right, married to a surgeon, already mother to 2 perfect children. I was the outsider. Always would be. Christmas Eve arrived too quickly. I'd spent 2 hours getting ready, changing outfits 4 times before settling on a deep green dress. Elegant but not too flashy, expensive but not obviously so. I'd learned to walk this tightrope over the years. "You look beautiful," James said, appearing in our bedroom doorway. He looked handsome in his tailored suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. Sometimes I forgot how much I loved him, buried under the weight of his family's disapproval. "Think your mother will notice?" I asked, immediately regretting the bitterness in my tone. James's face fell. "Emma, please. Can we just try to have a nice evening?" "I always try, James." I picked up my clutch, checking that I had everything. "It's your mother who—" "I know." He cut me off, running a hand through his hair. "I know she can be difficult, but she's my mother. And it's Christmas." The drive to the Ashford estate took 40 minutes, each mile tightening the knot in my stomach. The house came into view, a sprawling mansion lit up like a Christmas card, wreaths on every window, a massive tree visible through the front windows. Old money. Generations of it. Something I would never have, never be. Charlotte's Mercedes was already in the circular driveway, along with several other expensive cars I didn't recognize. More family. More witnesses to my inadequacy. "Ready?" James asked, reaching for my hand. I squeezed back, drawing strength from his touch. "Ready." Victoria greeted us at the door, resplendent in cream, silk, and pearls. Her smile was warm for James. When her eyes shifted to me, they cooled by several degrees. "James, darling." She embraced her son, then turned to me with that practiced smile. "Emma, how festive you look." There it was. The first jab. Festive meant gaudy. Too much, trying too hard. "Thank you, Victoria. Your home looks beautiful, as always." Well, some of us had time to properly decorate. Her eyes flicked to my simple wedding ring, the modest house James and I shared. Charlotte did most of it, really. Between managing her household, the children's activities, and her charity work, I don't know how she does it. Message received. Charlotte was perfect. I was lacking. The living room was filled with Ashfords and their friends. James's father, Richard, gave me a genuine smile and a warm hug. He'd always been kind to me. Charlotte air-kissed my cheeks, her perfume expensive and cloying. Her husband, Dr. Preston Hayes, barely glanced up from his phone. "Emma, you made it." Charlotte's voice dripped with false enthusiasm. "Mother was just saying she wasn't sure you'd come. Didn't you have some work thing?" I hadn't mentioned any work thing. No, I wouldn't miss Christmas with the family. "Of course not." Victoria appeared at my elbow with a glass of champagne. "Though I suppose your own family has different traditions. What did you say your father did again?" "Something with construction." "He was a contractor, yes. Before he died. But Victoria knew that. She just enjoyed reminding everyone that I came from working-class stock." The evening stretched ahead like a marathon. I sipped my champagne and smiled until my face hurt. Dinner was served at 8 in the formal dining room. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over the table set with china that probably cost more than my car. I'd been placed between James's elderly Aunt Margaret, who was mostly deaf, and Charlotte's oldest child, 7-year-old Penelope, who ignored me completely. Victoria held court from the head of the table, orchestrating conversation like a conductor. Richard and I were just discussing our winter plans. We've rented a villa in Tuscany for February. Charlotte, Preston, and the children are coming, of course. Sounds wonderful, James said politely. We hadn't been invited. We never were. Yes, well, it's important to expose children to culture. Penelope is already learning Italian, aren't you, darling? Victoria beamed at her granddaughter. What about you and Emma, James? Any plans for the new year? I felt James tense beside me. We'd been trying to have a baby for 2 years. It was a source of private pain, but somehow Victoria always found ways to probe the wound. We're focusing on our careers right now, I said, keeping my voice steady. I just landed a major client. Oh, how nice, Victoria interrupted, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Though I've always thought a woman's greatest achievement is motherhood. Wouldn't you agree, Charlotte? Charlotte, nursing her 3rd glass of wine, nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. Being a mother gives you purpose. Real purpose, not just work. The table fell silent for a moment. Even James looked uncomfortable. Emma's work is important, he said quietly. She's incredibly talented. Of course, dear. Victoria patted his hand. Though one day you'll want a family. A real family. I excused myself to the bathroom, my hands shaking as I gripped the marble sink. 5 more hours. I could survive 5 more hours. When I returned to the dining room, dessert was being served, an elaborate Christmas pudding that Victoria announced she'd made herself, though I'd seen the box from the expensive bakery in the trash on my way back from the bathroom. Emma, Victoria said sweetly, I hope you saved room. Though I know you girls are always watching your figures. Charlotte has been doing Pilates. She looks wonderful, doesn't she? Charlotte preened. I forced a smile and accepted a slice. The conversation turned to gossip about people I didn't know, charitable organizations I wasn't part of, country club drama I couldn't relate to. I was a ghost at the table, present but invisible, except when Victoria needed a target. James, your cousin William is expanding his practice, Victoria continued. 3 new partners this year. Such ambition. And his wife just had their 3rd child. They're doing so well. That's great for William, James said, his jaw tight. Yes. Well, some people know how to build a legacy. Speaking of which, Richard and I have been thinking about the family trust. We want to ensure it goes to those who will carry on the Ashford name properly. My fork clattered against my plate. Everyone looked at me. Sorry, I muttered. But Victoria wasn't done. It's important to us that our grandchildren understand their heritage. Real Ashford grandchildren, I mean. Blood matters, you understand. Mother, James started, but she held up a hand. I'm simply being practical, dear. When Charlotte and Preston have another child, they're trying for a 3rd, did you know? We want to ensure the trust is distributed fairly. Among the legitimate heirs. The word legitimate hung in the air like poison. She wasn't talking about marriage legitimacy. She was talking about me. About my inability to give James children. About my unsuitability as an Ashford wife. Something inside me snapped. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. All eyes turned to me. Excuse me, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I need to say something. Emma, James reached for my hand, but I pulled away. No, James. I've been quiet for 5 years. 5 years of polite smiles and subtle insults. 5 years of being told, in 1,000 different ways, that I'm not good enough for this family. I turned to Victoria. You want to talk about legitimate heirs? About blood? Let me tell you about blood. Victoria's face paled. I don't know what you mean. The fertility problems James and I have been having? They're not mine. The doctors confirmed it 3 months ago. It's James. Your perfect son has a medical condition that makes it nearly impossible for us to conceive naturally. I felt James's shock beside me, but I couldn't stop now. We've been considering IVF, but we haven't told you because you've made it abundantly clear that you only care about genetic Ashford grandchildren. Charlotte's mouth had fallen open. Richard looked stunned. Victoria gripped the table, her knuckles white. But that's not even the best part, I continued, my voice gaining strength. You want to know about legitimate heirs? About family? My mother, the woman you've dismissed as that construction worker's wife, she saved your company. What? Victoria gasped. 23 years ago, when Ashford Industries was going under, yes, I did my research. My mother's father, my grandfather, bailed you out. He was a real estate developer. A successful one. He gave Richard the loan that saved this family, this house, this entire lifestyle you've been using to look down on me. Richard's face had gone ashen. Elizabeth Chun, he whispered. Your mother was Elizabeth Chun? Is Elizabeth Chun, I corrected. And when my grandfather died, your family came to his funeral. You cried, Richard. You told my mother that you owed him everything. And then you both pretended none of it ever happened. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria looked like she might be sick. Charlotte kept looking between her parents and me, confused. James sat frozen, his face unreadable. I don't understand, Charlotte finally said. Why wouldn't you have told us this? Because your mother asked us not to, Richard said quietly, his voice heavy with shame. She was embarrassed. We'd almost lost everything, and Elizabeth's father, Emma's grandfather, saved us. Victoria couldn't stand that someone she considered beneath U.S. had that kind of power over our family. So you just erased him? I asked, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. He saved you, and you erased him. And when I married James, you couldn't stand that either, could you, Victoria? Because you knew. You knew exactly who I was, and it killed you that your son loved the granddaughter of the man who saw your family at its lowest. Victoria's hands were shaking. That's not. I never meant. You meant every word, every slight, every dismissive comment. You spent 5 years trying to drive me away because you couldn't stand the reminder of your failure. My family's success. The debt you could never repay. Emma, I'm sorry, Richard said, standing. I should have said something years ago. I should have stopped this. Your grandfather was a good man. One of the best I ever knew. And your mother. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to James. He spent 5 years caught between loving me and loving his family, never understanding why his mother hated me so much. I turned to James, whose eyes were full of tears. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the fertility tests. I was waiting for the right time. But there's never a right time in this family, is there? James stood, his chair falling backward. We're leaving. James. Victoria started, but he cut her off. No, Mother. Emma's right. About all of it. I've watched you treat my wife like she's nothing for 5 years. I told myself it would get better, that you just needed time. But you never wanted to accept her, did you? Because of your pride. Because you couldn't stand being reminded that someone else saved us. The car ride home was silent for the first 10 minutes. James gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. I stared out the window, emotionally drained. Why didn't you tell me? He finally asked. About the tests. I was scared, I admitted. Scared you'd blame yourself. Scared it would make things worse with your family. Your mother already thinks I'm failing as a wife. Imagine if she knew the truth. It wouldn't have mattered to her, James said bitterly. She would have found a way to make it your fault anyway. I know. He pulled the car over suddenly, on a dark stretch of road lit only by street lamps. He turned to me, his face illuminated by the dashboard lights. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Emma. For every dinner, every snide comment, every time I asked you to just try harder to get along with her. For not protecting you the way I should have. James. No, let me finish. You were right. All of it. And I've been blind. Willfully blind, because I didn't want to admit that my mother was capable of such cruelty. But she is. And I let her direct it at you for 5 years. I reached for his hand. I love you. I've always loved you. Even when your family made me feel like I was nothing, you made me feel like I was everything. That's why I stayed. That's why I kept showing up to those dinners. We don't have to go back, he said firmly. Not until she apologizes. Really apologizes. And even then, only if you want to. And if she doesn't apologize, then we build our own family. Our own traditions. We don't need them, Emma. We never did. I just couldn't see it. He kissed me then, there on the side of the road on Christmas Eve, and for the first time in years I felt free. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. James and I woke up in our own bed, in our modest house, without the weight of the Ashford expectations hanging over us. "Merry Christmas," he murmured, pulling me close. "Merry Christmas." We'd planned to spend the day at his family's house, opening presents and enduring more of Victoria's pointed remarks. Instead, we had nowhere to be, nothing to do. It was glorious. "Want to call your mom?" James suggested. "Have her over for breakfast?" My heart swelled. "Really? Really? I'd like to hear more about your grandfather, about what he did for my family. And I want to apologize to her, too, for how my mother treated her daughter." We called my mom, who was surprised but delighted. She arrived an hour later, bringing homemade cinnamon rolls and stories about my grandfather, his business acumen, his generosity, his belief that success meant nothing if you didn't help others. "He would have liked you, James," my mother said, patting his hand. "When Emma told me she was marrying an Ashford, I was worried. Not because of you, but because I knew Victoria would make it difficult. Your father called me after you two got engaged. He apologized for the past, for erasing my father's contribution. But Victoria never did. She will," James said firmly, "one way or another." As if summoned by our conversation, James's phone rang. It was his father. "I'll take it outside," James said, stepping onto our small porch. My mother looked at me, her eyes full of love and concern. "How are you really, sweetheart?" "Honestly, better than I've been in years." I finally told the truth. All of it. And James, he stood by me, finally stood up to his mother. She smiled. "That's all I ever wanted for you. A partner who sees your worth." James came back inside, his expression unreadable. "That was Dad. He wants to meet with us. Without Mother. Says he has something important to tell us." We met Richard at a coffee shop the next morning, neutral territory. He looked older somehow, the previous night having aged him. "Thank you for coming," he said, ordering coffee for all of us. "I know you have no reason to trust me after everything. What did you want to tell us?" James asked, his arm protectively around me. Richard pulled out an envelope. "This has been sitting in my safe for 23 years. It's a letter from Emma's grandfather, written shortly before he died. He made me promise to give it to his granddaughter if she ever married into our family." He handed it to me with shaking hands. "I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry for many things." With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. The paper was yellowed with age, but the handwriting was strong and clear. "To my future granddaughter's husband. If you're reading this, it means my Elizabeth's daughter has married into the Ashford family. I want you to know that I didn't help the Ashfords out of obligation or expectation of repayment. I did it because Richard Ashford reminded me of myself at that age. Proud, scared, trying to save his family's legacy. But pride can be a poison. It can make you forget where you came from, who helped you along the way. Don't let pride poison your family. Don't let it come between you and the woman you love. Love is the only legacy that matters. Not money, not names, not blood. Love. If you can remember that, you'll be richer than any trust fund could make you. Tell my granddaughter that her grandfather is proud of her. Tell her that her worth isn't determined by anyone else's opinion. And tell her to build a family based on love, not obligation. Regards, David Chen." I couldn't see through my tears. James read over my shoulder, and I felt his chest shake with emotion. Even Richard was crying. "He was right," Richard said quietly. "About all of it. Pride did poison us. Victoria and I both let it. And Emma, I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry for what you've endured. You deserve better from us. You deserve to know how much your family meant to ours." "What happens now?" I asked, wiping my eyes. "Now we make it right. Victoria is struggling with what happened, but she knows she was wrong. She's agreed to therapy, to really examine why she treated you the way she did. It won't be quick, and it won't be easy. But I'm not giving her a choice anymore." James squeezed my hand. "Emma gets to decide if and when she's ready to have any relationship with Mother. No pressure. No timelines." "Agreed," Richard said immediately. "And regardless of what happens between you and Victoria, I want you to know something else." He pulled out another envelope, this one crisp and new. "This is a copy of a document I filed with our lawyers yesterday. Half of the family trust now goes to you, Emma. Not because you married James, but because your grandfather saved our family. This is debt repayment, long overdue. I don't want your money, I said automatically. It's not about the money, Richard replied. It's about acknowledgement, recognition. Your grandfather's contribution deserves to be honored. And whether you use it or donate it or burn it, that's entirely up to you. But the Ashford family owes the Chin family a debt that goes far beyond money. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of generations of pride and pain and secrets finally being lifted. Thank you, I finally said, for the letter, for finally telling the truth. Richard nodded. Your grandfather was a wise man. It's time we started listening to his advice. James and I walked out of the coffee shop hand in hand. The winter sun was bright, reflecting off the snow. Somewhere in the city, Victoria was facing her own demons. Charlotte was probably confused and hurt, forced to see her mother's cruelty for the first time. The Ashford family would never be the same. But maybe that was okay. Maybe they needed to change. What are you thinking? James asked. I'm thinking about my grandfather's letter. About building a family based on love, not obligation. Me too. And I'm thinking, maybe we should look into adoption. If IVF doesn't work, build our family our own way. James stopped walking and turned to me, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I love you so much. I love you too. And I'm sorry last night was so painful, but I'm not sorry I finally told the truth. Neither am I. Merry Christmas, Emma Chin Ashford. Merry Christmas, James. We walked home through the snow, past decorated windows and families gathering, ready to build our own traditions. Ready to honor my grandfather's legacy of love over pride. Ready for whatever came next together. The Christmas dinner that was supposed to break me had instead freed me. And sometimes the truth, no matter how painful, is the greatest gift of all.